Giles Gobson, who comes to us live from London. Thank you for your time, Giles. So, of course, King Charles is expected to host a reception for world leaders and royal guests at Buckingham Palace. Who are those world leaders that have been invited to the funeral?
Well, just in the last 30 minutes or so, we've seen South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa arriving here in the UK, of course, after that trip that he took to Washington, D.C. to meet with US President Joe Biden. Mr. Biden, I can tell you, has also arrived here in the UK. And what we're expecting to see over the next few hours is several of these world leaders who are now here in London for the funeral going to Westminster Hall, where Queen Elizabeth is still lying in state, that ancient hall in the Houses of Parliament that you can see behind me. We're expecting to see a few of them popping up there over the course of the day, as we saw Justin Trudeau, for example, the Canadian Prime Minister, do on Saturday here in London. And then, as you were mentioning, we are expecting to see this diplomatic reception, as it's being called, in Buckingham Palace, hosted by King Charles. Of course, King Charles will have met many of these world leaders over the years when he was still Prince of Wales, but this is the first time really that he's going to be in a room with the South African President, with the US President, with other members of royalty from all over Europe. This will be the first time that he's doing that as King Charles, as the head of state.
So talk to us about how the whole process of the Queen's body lying in state has fared off for people there in London. I mean, we've had that with Utata Nelson Mandela, where we saw people braving the elements and the queues were snaking for people, who wanted to catch a glimpse of the body there lying in state. How has it fared really with the people who are coming through to catch a glimpse of the Queen's body lying in state?
It's been a massive operation, as you might imagine. There has been this queue snaking along the River Thames here in London. At times it's been stretching over 5 miles long because so many people want to have their opportunity, and they only get really a few seconds, less than a minute perhaps, to walk through Westminster Hall, to take a look at the casket and maybe make some sort of a sign, some sort of a bow or curtsy. That's the sort of thing we've been seeing as she's been lying in state over the last few days or so. I can tell you, I just took a look at the official website that keeps a track of how long the queue is. If you join the queue right now, you'll be waiting 13 and a half hours to get to the front. And we've been told by authorities that the last people to go past the casket will be at around 6:30 a.m. local time on Monday. Those will be the final people who get the chance to pay their respects before the hall is closed and before they start preparing for the state funeral later in the day. So at some point over the course of Sunday, we are going to see the authorities saying simply that you're not allowed to join the queue, that it's just too long, and that if you join now, you are just not going to get to the front before it closes. So just the length of the queue, the time that it's taking, is a real demonstration of just how many people wanted to come and pay their respects in person, not just watch the funeral, watch all the coverage that we've seen broadcast on television.
Now, Giles, we also heard how King Charles is going to be hosting a reception for some of those world leaders as they descend there. What do we know about the other members of the household? Because we know that they are also scheduled to have roles throughout the day. What more do we know about this?
Well, we're going to see the first big set-piece event, if you like, with Camilla, the Queen Consort, in a few hours. She's going to be giving a televised address. It is pre-recorded, but a broadcast to the nation in her new role as Queen Consort, of course, having been Prince Charles's, as he was then, wife for so many years. She is going to be giving this speech. We're told that she's going to really give a tribute, a dedication to Queen Elizabeth II. She's going to talk about, we're told, how Queen Elizabeth was a solitary woman in a male-dominated world. So, of course, so many of those photos that we've seen over the years from the G7 and G20, for example, when the Queen does attend for a day, you see that she is really one of the few women in those photographs when they do the team photograph, if you like, with the different heads of state. So we're going to see that televised address, that dedication from Camilla the Queen Consort, and then afterwards, right as it finishes, we're going to have a 1-minute silence across the United Kingdom. That is the first of a few of these that we're going to see. We're also going to see a 2-minute silence as the Queen's state funeral comes to a close on Monday as well.
Giles, as we're having this conversation, there are live visuals that are also coming in there as we see, people both young and old coming in to catch a glimpse of the Queen's body lying in state there. So talk to us about perhaps sentiments that you have been getting there on the ground from people following the passing of the Queen. I mean, it's been a very long week from the time that people received the news to the point that we're at right now, where we're heading towards the funeral itself.
That's right. It's just been such an extraordinary week. It's just been such a whirlwind in terms of just the incredible amount of change that you see happening in front of your eyes. Right from Thursday, when we had that first news that the Queen was under medical supervision, that was the term that they used. And then it was only a matter of hours before Buckingham Palace the royal family announced that Queen Elizabeth II had passed away at the age of 96. And then, of course, immediately, as soon as she passed away, Prince Charles became King Charles. That is something that he's been waiting decades to see. People here in the UK have been so used to the fact that he was the second in line, that he was Prince Charles, and then suddenly, after decades of waiting, he was thrown into that role, and we've seen him carrying out those duties. We've seen him making his first speech as the king to the nation, and we've also seen perhaps a new style. The Queen was not known for being overly formal, but she was from a previous age. She came to the throne all the way back in 1952. What we've seen from Charles so far in his role as king is an attempt to really establish a very close personal connection with the British people, quite literally a physical connection. We've seen him several times over the course of the week getting out of his official car and greeting crowds, shaking hands, spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes, perhaps longer, shaking people's hands, speaking to them, trying to establish that personal connection that I was talking about. And we've also seen the new Prince of Wales, Prince William, joining him on those, perhaps also a nod to the fact that he is also stepping up. He is now first in line, the new heir to the throne.
So Giles, perhaps if you can give us, just an order of events roughly for tomorrow, because we do understand that at about 6:30 a.m. The doors of the Westminster Hall at the House of Parliament, where Queen Elizabeth II has been laying in state, will be closed to the public. So moving forward from there, what will happen?
That's right, so 6:30 a.m. local time here in London on Monday is when the final few people, the lucky few people, will get the chance to see the Queen's casket inside Westminster Hall. The doors will then close, and of course all the royal officials, the military, will then start preparing for the procession, which takes place several hours later. What we're going to see is the Queen's casket moved from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey, where the state funeral is taking place. That is a very short journey, but there's going to be a huge amount of pomp and ceremony. We're going to see members of the Royal Navy carrying her casket on a special gun carriage through the streets of London, and we'll also see King Charles and other senior members of the royal family walking behind the casket as it makes that short but very important journey from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. We will then see the state funeral taking place, 2,000 official guests crammed into Westminster Abbey to watch that occasion that, of course, is going to be watched on television screens all around the world. And then the action moves from here in central London up to Windsor. There's going to be a public ceremony, a public funeral, if you like, for the Queen at Windsor Castle, in a chapel inside Windsor Castle. And then what we're going to see is, after so many public events, after so much public mourning, we're going to see the doors closing and the royal family having a private service, because, of course, for them, yes, they have lost their Queen, but they've also lost their mother, they've lost their grandmother. So that final service will not be something that the public will see. It will be very much a moment for the family to take stock and to remember their lost mother or their lost grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II.